Okay, we're going to begin with this respiratory kind of rhythmic pathway. So I want us to open up the front space. So you'll take a bolster under your ribs and you'll have a block under the tailbone. So I encourage you to start with sitting on, but sit to lean back. So if I scoot back to my block, which is right next to my bolster at the lowest setting, this is critical, it's low. And when you sit up on it, push it right next to your bolster. Yeah, learn how to use some of your parts to move things around versus always the arms. I find it kind of fun to tackle. And then when I have my feet close-ish, I like to kind of pivot my toes in. So just pivot my feet to turn inwards. And then as I guide my back onto the support that lifts up my breathing muscles, this is a nice one to relax the diaphragm. And as we guide back, you don't really need your belt. You'll place a sand, perhaps a weight, either across the ribs or on the thigh lids. Okay. I want to be as kind to my back to open up. So since this is a back bending pose, to kind of alert the rhythm of the lung, the costal breathing, the intercostals, I like to start with my knees resting together and then the sand up here across. Some like to have the sand from heart to belly. Some are just going to put sand on the hips. Okay, so if you're going hipward, you might extend the legs down and add the sand on the upper thigh. Okay, so all up to you. If you find you're just going to orient your bones into opening up the breathing muscles without sand in the beginning, find that alignment for elongation in the front line of the spine, right behind the heart. And then as you present that openness with the arms, let the shoulders center back. I have 2 blankets folded up under my head. It's probably too many, but I like to start when there's no kind of shock to my system, with plenty of padding under my head. And then with a few rounds of breath, I might slide one of the blankets back. But first, I'm going to check in with that inner environment and kind of feel the total breath, which doesn't mean you're going to total, right, yourself. You're working on enhancing that feel, because this practice is all by feel, right? Right, the nerve rich fibers are all, there's so many on skin, right? It's the most of the body, even more than other sensory organs. And it's your largest one, right? The skin. So you can feel when you breathe that pressure out into the rib body, the central station of breathing feel, right, is the ribs. So if you've got sand on them, that's weight training for the breathing muscles. I think that's pretty amazing. But I sometimes feel minus the sand is good. Maybe the knees rest together and you have sand or you don't. But let's take a few moments to orient the openness of the chest with 1 blanket folded, with 2 blankets, anything under the back to open up the front spaces. And I'll just demonstrate several variations if you're kind of still considering options, right? It might be resting the knees in. It might be legs reaching down, or kind of a semi-reach. Maybe you're not quite committed to it. The legs stretch down, but the knees are still resting together. But feeling the response with the alignment of the inhale, right? That's actually a moving alignment all the time. Doesn't stay static, right? As you're existing. So feeling that approach of inner expansion, spaciousness, and then consider kind of relaxishness. We'll just make that word up. But how could you relax on the out breath? You might feel this full range of stretch right in the front body, And if it's a sore feeling in your back, then be sure that you walk your feet towards your seat and really bend the knees a lot. That could be really helpful here. And if you like the openness with the legs reaching down, feel the shoulders trying to roll back and in towards the mid back. So with the alignment of inhale and the relaxed, responsive out breath, exhale. Relax the eyes, setting that focus inwards. Even though it goes inwards, you're trying to expand outwards. And now with the leg reach, right? It's either they extend down or they stay in their bent perspective. And we're going to feel if we can walk the feet in towards the center, towards your seat. And then as the knees keep that point up, right? Now, if I have the knees together, that's really more comfy for my back, that's perfect. But if you can feel the solid connection of your feet pushing, the knees pointing up, and then how that orients into your kind of your connection of the pelvic basin towards the hip, the leg world. Okay, so let's slide any sand away and get a belt. And if it's buckled up and it's in a loop, that's great. We'll eventually use that pretty soon, so you might buckle it up. But first things first, we just hold the belt wider than shoulder width. You do want to give yourself, just be generous, right? So wide hold with the belt. I reach overhead to the right amount of connection into my shoulders. So I want to still feel like I'm pulling the belt apart. And then I'm going to bring the right knee in towards the chest. That means towards it, doesn't mean I'm trying to challenge myself and push it in as close. Just this is my range. And then I just move the belt towards the knee. So right knee first. Gonna go one at a time. Inhale, arms stretch back, holding the belt, right foot down. And then switch sides, left leg draws in. So the pace of the respiratory muscles, right? You're going to feel as you draw the leg in and the belt in, is that an inhale or an exhale? Just notice what works best for you. I find inhale when my arms go back, and then exhale as I move the knee and the belt closer. So take just a few more moments here to coordinate. I like this word coordinate. I know coordinate may not be spelled C-O-R-E-T-U, but I'm thinking that the last couple of days. We got a lot of requests this class, so we're going to see if we can put them all together in a nice package. And as you motion, you can feel the workings of your back kind of gripped up. And when I lower the foot down, the core feels a little bit challenged. So move the belt back. I'm going to put it to the side so I don't lose track of it. Okay, if you've got multiple blankets under your head, you want to just have one at this point, one folded blanket. So the other one has to go away. And then I'm sand free. I'm going to walk my feet towards the seat. And then I'm going to reach for the handles on the bolster. What I've found lately is with this guidance is to do less pushing, not as far down with the bolster, just as much as you need in the beginning. So feel your head on the blanket, not your neck, right? And you're going to lift your hips and scoot your bolster down across the back of the pelvis. And then as your feet lift up and your hips balance on the bolster, okay? They're no longer balancing on the block. That's about the basic change. So once I balance on the bolster, there's a broadness as if I have just a bigger pelvis. I mean, imagine if you had this much width that you can work with, wouldn't it be interesting? But for now, we're just using it as a holder. And then taking your belt in a loop, you want to connect it and go for the big loop. And as you scoop in your feet into the belt, knees to chest, as you push the feet up to the ceiling, just be curious how they move up and then a little forward. Okay, so I can feel my lower belly kind of wake up, my ribs, they're pretty cozy because of this bolster support. But as you hold on to the belt, feel that sense of the circulation of the skin on the bolster. Kind of interested in that lately, just this last half day. Okay, so push your feet out into a stance. It doesn't have to be wide, but move the feet apart. So the detail in the legs changes a bit, especially the core balance. I find I like to work with sometimes when my feet are together, I move the legs down and up. But here, when I move my feet wide, so I got a wide reach with my feet, I'm going to hold on to the belt for now. So there's resistance in that lower kind of posterior core zone. And then feel the tailbone trying to relax. So that's interesting. Do you push it down and then pretend you're relaxing it? Or do you just let the belly move up and down with the breath, as it does anyway, but observing that, even closing your eyes, how the abdomes, it's an abdome. Okay, so as the abdomes, the abdominals, they kind of center and lift up into a peak, kind of a peak pose of abdominals. Now, just let the feet push out. Make sure that there's resistance here. So I'm going to cinch up the belt a little bit so the loop is not quite so wide, and then relax my feet into the belt. I think I'm going to make it a little smaller just so it's easy. There's no reason to cause a lot of resistance or shakiness right now. It's already challenging enough just to be upside down. So, and if you find it's easy for you, maybe just keep the expansion out with the legs, because it'll connect into your hip sockets. And then as my feet reach out, I like to circle them. It is a little challenging if the belt's closer to the arch. You might want it just right next to the heel so you don't lose your belt, but it's always fun to lose your belt sometimes. But find the circling action of the lower piece of the leg, which is kind of your feet, and that's that. Right, the knees aren't going to circle at all. And then without the feet being pushed into, right, they're resting out, they're not being stepped on. Let the body receive the inversion for a few moments. Let the inner leg, the leg pit, the groins kind of flush out from the feet, down that channel of the leg pits, and then it moves back to the belly. Kind of your first pool of circulation of fluid return is in the abdominals, and then it goes back a little higher up towards the throat. Right, those are two areas that you want kind of a think tank of moisture, right? These pools, these fluid areas in the core. So that the hands can rest on the ribs to feel the breathing. They can also be relaxed out to the side. It's your practice. This is a guide, right? Like an outline. So feeling the belly gently move, whether it goes up, it goes out. It's your belly to move. Just feeling the practices of kind of nourishment in these ways of changing circulation in our bodies from these shapes. And now feel the curve, like the body is all these, nothing's straight, right? There's all these curves, movements occurring. So as we bend the legs, I want you to reach up to the belt with both of the hands on this one as you pull towards your core and slide the feet together. Okay, feel where the tail space is touching. This doesn't mean that you move your hand to that space, but apply that touch. Okay, right foot kind of pushes a little higher than the left, and just slide the left foot out of the belt, the leg extends down. And now make that loop big enough that it possibly could go just to the occiput, so to the shelf at the back of your head. Now, I'm a little picky on this one. I like it to be so that the longer you do the practice, the pickier you get sometimes. I like it to be a pretty big loop, but the tail of the right out of the belt, I like to be able to pull that if I need. So I'll put that to one side where I can change it if needed, but don't be too ambitious about how the loop should be. You want to be able to relax back into the belt. Okay, and place sand on the left thigh, right? So it is here, right? It's at the occiput. So if I have my belt to the back of my head, I say occiput, but it's usually, to be honest, I have my belt a little bit higher. I just go with what feels comfy for me, because I don't need this block anyway. But I find where it's comfortable, and some of us might be really averse to this period, having the belt there. So we can take the belt in our hands and reach overhead. It's a leg float no matter how you look at it, isn't it? Some put the belt around the rib cage and like to feel that sensory feedback from the belt touching as they're breathing, so you can feel the ray of movement with the ribs. Okay, but as you traction either your neck or just the leg float, if you have the hands holding the belt, right, the belt's around where the thumb and the index, that webbing space, you can place it. Okay, but the sand, I think, is the big part. So wherever the belt is moving, whether you're holding it behind your head, your hands, however you decide, you can even simply hold the belt and just pull and feel that stretch into your calf. Could be that simple. Okay, but that left leg relaxing down with weight on it is important. And I have my leg kind of touching the block, the upper back portion of my left thigh, and I like that. It feels safe for my knee, but we'll see what happens when I get to side two. Okay, so for now, breathe here now. Okay, feel how your head leans back. Feel that length into the neck and the shape of circulation that comes, right? It doesn't mean that you arrive and this is it. It might change. You might decide to bend your knee or even take the belt off the back of your head just to feel the difference when your neck relaxes down onto the blanket. Okay, and I push my blanket back. I want it mostly just under my head, not under my neck. I don't need to round that anymore. Okay, now with the last few moments here before we switch over, feel if you can do less exertion with pushing the leg in one direction or the other. Just let the fluid drain here, right? That's key, that lymph drain. A few breaths. Perfect. Now, as you switch sides, you might go simple with just moving the sand to your core or off to the side, shift the leg that's up. You might decide, oh no, I'm going to take the belt off the back of my head like I'm doing and then move. I like to go that way sometimes. Oftentimes I'll keep the belt at the back of my head, but this seems like the way I want to go today. So as my right leg lowers down, kind of feel, remember a while ago, you don't have to repeat this, we were going, hold the belt knee to chest, knee to chest. So I want you to kind of have a little muscle memory of that. So it's not leg bendy, but it's leg extendy, right? So instead of trying to push my knee in, I'm extending. So just this visceral sensation right in the abdominal muscles. So this would be like core basics for Iyengar yoga, would be legs upside down. Okay. And the myriad of ways you can do that is you can see these basics that we've done over time. Aren't things that you have to think about that much, but we'll explore some other variations as well. So our back is really comfortable with the core work. So the sand is now my right thigh. My right foot is turning out a bit, so what's going to be helpful for me if I can't touch the wall with my foot, which would be ideal, then I won't have to worry about rotation, is I just like to set my right leg a little off to the right side and then see if I can kind of jet my heel a little bit out so my foot is up. And if I kind of peek down at it, yeah, usually I feel like it's turning in a lot, but it's actually straight up. Okay, kind of funny what you feel circulation wise in the bone. And then it does take a bit of energy. And if it doesn't go that way, maybe acceptance works okay. But if it hurts, you got to make some change. So the upper leg, see if you can let that drain out so it's not going to lock too much. You might have to do a little nano bend with your knee and just center back your head into the belt maybe, or you're holding the belt. Just some moments of respecting the breath, right? That's kind of your guide. That's your main ingredient here. Oxygen, free refills. Just feeling that consistency of breath. How does it feel in your midsection, which could be ribs? It could be the feel in the upper back. Parts of the practice are meditative, right? We find a shape that we can have a physical meditation, a reality of the reverse flow in the body. Just a few more moments. If something's uncertain, right, you can always ask if you need a different direction with the props. Perfect. Yeah, and that leg that's reaching, you might feel the hinge, the knee. This might be one that you explore in a few moments, the inner leg. Let's do a little of that. So let's slide the sand off. And this can be a forgotten layer of the reverse flow, right? The inversion. This gets a little bit left out, I think. So when we take the belt off the back of our head, sand is away, hold the left foot, and then I would say find a way to feel the tailbone weight into the bolster. Like, so you kind of initiate almost like this lower abdominal tone. Okay, it's not quite pelvic floor tone because this leg is flinging up in the air and it's hard to coordinate that. But I like to even place my right hand on the front of that right hip bone. And then I'm going to try to press down to my tailbone and then bring the right heel in. That can be a bit of a challenge on the hip flexor. And then bring the knee a little closer in, foot off the ground. Okay, so right hand's going to hold the knee. If your knee doesn't like to be held, you can hold the back of the leg. And then the left leg stretches out. Yeah, and just observe slow, not like, okay, I go with gravity and it drops off, right? It's not going to break, but I want you to get a feel of the muscle engagement. So it's not only my leg is going out, both legs move outwards for that adductor. So the adductor focus. So I'm holding on, I let my right knee move out, the left leg stretch out as well, but I have kind of half a leg moving out on the right side. And it's helpful to find that support for the pelvic basin, right? Your spine grows out of it, your hips. I mean, pelvis is pretty amazing for its support, but try to integrate some caliber of strength here. And as the leg moves out to that left side, this is like, I'm gonna have to say, this is my final range of movement, because my right leg, especially since it's bending, it's not going anywhere. It's kind of stuck. This is it. You could do things like add that therapy ball to the side, upper outer side of the right thigh on the bolster. That could be kind of neat, right? If I use the ball, place it the upper outer thigh, then it's like when I hold the right leg, it's just it dials down the intensity in the adductor. Everyone needs to stretch these parts, okay? Especially those of us that have done a lot of stretching over time. It's kind of an underappreciated area because of, and it's the leg pit. Leg pits are important. Okay, so when you come back up, go easy. Okay, right foot goes up and we switch around. So right leg stretches out, left hand holds the left knee. You kind of already know the drill. But here, actually, I have the ball on the right side still, and it feels really good. So you can see easier on this side, but so for instance, you got your right leg reaching out, and I'm just going to demo it on the left leg. But you could have the ball right next to on the bolster and the edge of it, and see if that kind of is a little bit of a, kind of a bumper, isn't it? The bumper ball. So you don't exert too much on this. You almost need something to stop you, even though you might think, no, my leg is stopping. But if it's shaky, this whole collaboration of the groins, it can be, a pretty boggy area. Lots of lymph nodes. I mean, good area to flush out. This is a good way to do this versus sitting upright, because most of us round our back too much when we do that. So this kind of fixes that one. Okay, take a few breaths here. This may not be your favorite part of the program because it does feel like a weird exertion in our leg parts. Pelvic floor, opposite of prolapse. Can only be good. Okay, now as I resist, right, just to move my leg and back in center, I have to resist. I mean, I happen to be lucky there's a wall holding me, but when I come back up, I'm going to let the left leg relax down. I'm not going to give it any rules to stay straight or anything. But as I cross the right leg now to the left, I'm going to hold the belt with the left hand, and then, you might lose props, they might roll away, but cross it over so the outer right thigh can feel that response. So it's elaborating the inner and outer leg. This will be really nice before we do our sage poses. So it'll be wake up the surface muscles. You can tap the side of the hip. You can just be, what's wrong with that? Okay, bend the right knee. Okay, feel if there's any curling motion, right? Okay, that to me would be if my knee was going into my chest, not to the side. So I'm going to try to let the right arm be open and then casually pull, and my right knee goes towards my right side, the chest. And then as I switch the foot that's in, you can do anything you need in between. If you need to hug your knees into the chest, you hug your knees in. If you want to do a little leg tantrum, you do a leg tantrum. So as the left leg guides over, I find that the bottom leg here has to take a little bit of a bend. So there's some kind of curling motion from my pelvis into my leg. The left leg, in fact, goes kind of more straight-ish to the right. So I am trying to work on those lateral rotators. You don't have to identify all the parts, but just have a felt sense of that circulation. Remember, this practice is by feel, right? It's all by feel. Okay, so feeling where you're holding with the right hand. If it hurts your wrist, you can definitely relax your right elbow completely to the ground with a little tug with the hand holding onto the belt. So kind of like it orients the alignment. Kind of just a holder for direction. Take a few more moments here. Okay, now we start the movement of the hip now. So as we bend the left knee, I would say just slide the belt off on that side. Okay, find your ball. If you can't find a ball right now, you can use a block, okay? A block at the narrow setting works fine, and a ball works good because it's squishable, it's smushable. So it will respond to your body's needs to move and push in. So arms open out and then knees go side to side. Keep it simple. Just rocking through the pelvis. You might find one side your knees go up towards the arm, like a swing motion, like a smiley face that you're drawing on the lower back. You're just moving to have that felt sense through the pelvis, through the back of the hip, and the hip sockets. Okay. Yeah, and so if pushing into the ball feels interesting, I would say I go against that. I like to just see naturally what gravity does when I lean instead of forcing a squeeze on this one. That's why the block is not, I don't like that as much, because you kind of have to hold it. The ball kind of stays with you. You don't have to spend energy tightening muscles to use it. Okay, last couple motions. Enjoy that swinging movement out of the back. Okay. And then we're going to move the ball over to the side. I want you to lean to the left if possible, but if you need to go to the right, that's fine. And you're going to just roll, 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 roll as far over to the left as you can until you feel like, okay, now my knees are down. And you're going to use your hands to push you back off the bolster so you're right next to it. And then when we come around, we're going to come into a side sage pose. Oh, yes, this is good. Okay, so bolsters across, horizontal. Stack up some blankets or towels or whatever you got. Beach towels work really good. And when I stack up, I'm going to use the support of my block overhead under my hand. I know I generally will show this with 2 blocks. I don't know if 2 stacked blocks works better for you to use that. One seems to be pretty good for me, but you need to find out what aligns for you with reach. And maybe you don't even reach to a block. Not required. Okay. Feel around for where your sand is and a ball. Okay, I'm going to put my sand on my bolster because it'll keep my bolster steady. It won't, I'm finding, how do I get it so my bolster doesn't swerve with my ribs? I want to keep it straight across alignment. So if I put my sandbag on it, it stays down. Okay. As if the bolster needs sand. Take a ball in the inner right knee. Okay. Stretch the right leg back. Now let that core, that right side of the waist, relax in it. Okay, so you just rest onto the bolster. You can add some sand to that outer right hip. You can add it down a little further. I've found some people say they really like the sand close. They just really focus on the leg and the sand and the leg. I like weight on my hip today. It may change another day, but as we're here, the arm at the bottom, right, the left arm is between the bolster and the blanket. There's no, that arm is not up on any rounded prop or curved. Thus, some of us might need more blanket, right? So if you find that it pushes too much weight into your shoulder, then you'll put more height under your head. Right? That's a reason for more height. So when that right arm is reaching over, or maybe it's not for you, you have complete opportunity here to open the chest towards the ceiling or to reach the right arm overhead to touch the block. But feel that wave. Now we're going to a different experience of awareness with our costal breathing, right? So we're creating this length than we did a few moments ago. Okay, so reach it apart. Use the extremities, the leg, both legs even. The bottom, the leg closest to your bolster, the bending of that leg is essential to ease your back. Okay, so as we create these spaces between, right, in the vertebral column and also the ribs, just notice what feels good about it. So you want to kind of go deeper into that. So if you notice, oh, my left side feels pretty good, maybe you lean a little bit into the left rib cage. Breathing. Relax the weight of your head into the blanket. Now a final check that the left side is relaxing, especially at the left side of your face, right? That neck area is just letting go. And if the right upper extremity is feeling a little tired, right, just let the arm open. Just open the chest. You can feel what it's like to move from your shoulder, like you didn't emphasize your elbow and down to your hand. You were just kind of waving from your armpit chest around towards your, just above your elbow. Like, is there ability to move there, or is it kind of stuck? So what might help you is to feel the breath there. I mean, that's connected to rib. So it's interesting how we rely on like these hands, these wrists to do movement. Feel for the bigger parts that have the probably better circulation, right? As far as our peripheral circulation, right? Just think about, oh, this armpit area's got more blood flow. So opening that part of the body. Okay, and then we're just gonna simply move our right arm down next to the sand. If you have sand or your hip, you slide it away. Okay, now roll. So we're going to be on hands, knees, or you might decide to be on your elbows, okay, if you don't like to put weight on your wrists. So we're going to just turn. We're going to do a little bit of kind of back care 101 motion. I sometimes find elbows down is good. I'll tend to show with the hands down because that seems to be like what you would think would be, I guess, a normal thing. But it's all about this layer in here. It's not necessarily about my hands and my shoulder, right? So elbows are good. And I'm going to push my bolster forward, far away, so I have more space from in this tundra to feel. So we're going to alternate knee towards the chest. You know, like we did on our back, we're bringing the knee in. Can hardly do that here. But now we're going to be prone. Okay, not completely down the belly. Don't kick your wall. Okay, the goal is not kicking the wall. It's just squeeze the knee in towards the chest, chin in towards the leg, and then center. Now you could do this without your elbows on the bolster. You could be hands and knee in like this, chin in and center. Okay, let's just do about 6 of them, 6 more. So I kind of like this on the elbows, and it's really getting that impact in that right behind the heart. Squeeze and down. So really tuck the knee in, squeeze, and no kicking the wall. And last 2. Okay, so it's that tucking the movement, right? So you're squeezing in and down. Okay, so the back space, really everything's kind of motion under, but not in like a passive spine. I don't think your back is anywhere near passive right now. Okay, now come into a variation of stretching this area that you're squeezing. Hands can be down on the other side of the bolster. If you don't want to be down on your hands, you can be on your blankets. So you're going to stretch out the hip flexors and the torso, the waist reaches. So my hands would be on the firm ground. That's a little better on your wrists than the blanket under your hands. But if you find going down the elbows on the blanket or blankets, that's great. I love this. I like to have my elbows down and kind of reach the torso. Feel that length. Breathe. Take a few moments. Relax the hips. Okay, and then further this one, okay? So if you've got a block on the other side near your head, move it away. You're gonna push the blankets away. If you're not on the blankets, guess what? We're gonna turn our bolster lengthwise, okay? That's where your core goes. And I like to have the bolster so it kind of hits to the top of my thigh, not right at the attachment. So there's a little bit of a kind of a dip here. So when I lean in, or lower down, that is, I bring my elbows down. I'm kind of too close to the wall here. I'm going to move a little away. But I do want you to try to touch the wall, but not have it so your legs are bending a lot. So push back to a wall spot and feel, I go a little bit back. Okay, feel that you can stretch up so the back of the knees are open and your elbows are down. So you're in, it kind of just looks like a Sphinx pose, right? But we'll call this tummy time. Okay. Now push into your feet. If you don't have a wall space, let the toes hook under. I think that having a wall is a little bit more comfy for our lower back here. Pressing and then lifting up the ribs. See if you can use your hands to slide forward. Remember, you're not forcing firm onto the wrist. It's like I'm stretching out into my back. Okay, now let the hands slide back and bring them back so that they reach besides your thighs. Your shoulders might roll back a little bit, but extend the chest forwards. Breathe. It only helps. This is our best back hair, core. Right? It's going to be an interesting zone in the back. So carefully lower your knees. Okay. Feel how you soften. Bring a blanket or two in and bring your elbows out wide and your forehead onto your hands. So resting your forehead, relax your feet. They might turn in a bit. They might even touch the big toes and soften in the back. Okay, so I'm trying to emphasize the width of my breath in the back space, like those ribs. We spend so much of this energy with our breath in the front space because that's clearly where we see it or we think we feel it. But when you open it up with your forehead on the hands, feel the immersion of the breath moving in, expand through the ribs. Even if it feels like you can hardly really get them to push out when your chest is this direction, right? It's pressure. Although it's apparently an easier way to breathe is when we're face down, like we get a better breath, but it's challenging to get it to move wide and to stretch it, to make it flexible. Okay, now as we slide the hands back, our shoulders press back, we come up, arching. We come back to tabling. Let's table it. Let's turn the bolster across. Let's come into side sage on the right hip. Maybe a block goes behind your blankets. Ball on the inner left knee and sand it. Sand the left side. Okay, so if you sand the first side, probably a good idea to use it on the second. If you didn't, then no sand is needed. But a little caution how it pulls. Like for instance, since I'm kind of looking towards the screen, I can feel where it kind of snags into my back when I'm trying to twist too much. So this isn't a twist. I want you to be careful because there's a weight onto, so it gives you some leverage in it with the sand. So be careful, right? You want to take it easy. So my right thigh is really close to the bolster. I mean, it's not on top of it, but it's next to it. And the left arm stretches overhead to the block. Okay, so come into the side sage pose here. And just feel for your breathing muscles, right? And just noticing the balance of inhale. And if it feels like the breath is at its end range and there's stiffness with the movement of the muscles with the breath, that's okay. I mean, we are limited beings, right? In some ways with our breathing reference. I think it's when you kind of drop back into visualizing, that's when you feel more expansive. But the reality is there is kind of the ends of the movement of the breath, right? So enjoy that you can breathe well. And if you're feeling healthy right now, like you're not congested, those types of things, I would kind of celebrate on it and, not overdo it or wear yourself out. You don't want to be exhausted from breathing with such a deep breath focus, but just enjoy that it spreads. It kind of spreads wellness in the body, and breathing is the best reset button we got, right? It's our best reset button. Breathe. Take a breath, right? And if you're rolling too far back on the ribs to turn your head on the bolster of blanket, you might feel like you need to go more to the right. Okay, this is going to be magnificent. We're going to keep going with the side, left side of it. So I want us to rotate, careful of sand. If I got sand on my hip, I want to push it off before I roll. Otherwise, it's going to really pull some muscles. I don't want you to pull something, right? Okay, so when you're moving the sand, you're going to roll to the right. I'm going to guide my left thigh to my right and then come up. And then let's just take a moment to get up to sitting on our bolster. Okay, so bolster still across the mat, horizontal. We are going to maybe go into pigeon pose. And if you're thinking, I ain't going into pigeon, I will show an alternate. But you want to have a blanket or two behind, right next to your bolster, something right there if you're going to do the pigeon pose. And if you're not, you don't need to worry about the blanket. Okay, so first thing, we stretch the right leg out. So it goes out to about 1, 2 o'clock on the right side. I try to sit back on the bolster like I'm not quite going to Humpty Dumpty off the bolster, but I do want to use the kind of broadening out through my seat. So I don't want to make this too small of a movement. My right leg is far out. My left knee is bending, my left foot towards my right thigh or the bolster. And then I put a sandbag on the upper left thigh. Okay, now ball under the left knee is a good idea. When you're on the bolster, it's probably going to be a little more challenging. In some ways it is, in some ways it isn't for your hip, I guess. It just kind of depends on how you mark challenge. But as we come into this turn, we're going to add a belt option. I'm going to show two things. You can have a block besides your right lower leg. I'm also going to put a block just above the back of my right knee, so I don't lock my knee at all. It's like preventing something is good. And then I'm going to just reach the belt to my right foot, just an extra case. I can say it, just an extra case. She's so cautious. Okay, belt under the foot, unbuckle on the thigh. Okay, start with the kind of motion. You're going to turn to the left, reach your right hand for the left leg. It doesn't have to be the knee. It could be above the knee, could be below the knee. I don't feel like that's as useful. I think you try to aim for the knee. And even if you just get the knee and it slides away from you, like when you try to sit up tall, you can also get a hold of it and just lightly twist into that left side. Okay, and you might lose your ball. But it's not worth it to try to force your knee on the ground at all. Okay, that's never worth it. So something under, you can also use a block or a pillow or a towel. So as you turn to the left, feel the right foot pushing Okay, feel the ribs and what they love to do, which is rotate when they can get some time to rotate. They're usually in a box and you're kind of moving forward most of the day. So, yeah, celebrate that you got costal breathing going on here, intercostal motion. Okay, and now just keeping that basis of turning to the left. I kind of know I got a right leg over here, so I'm going to reach over to that belt with my right hand. I'm going to kind of hold it together, still keep that turn to the left here and there, and then pull with the right hand. I'm going to start with my hand just above my knee, holding the belt, and lean to the right. And I'm going to move my hand a little bit further down towards the foot. Now, left arm can go up. This is a good pose, right? Some people will get worried about SI joint here, I think. So what I find personally, what I like to do, so I'm not getting end range or, going past what my limit would be in my back, is I like to use a block on that right side. I put it at the highest setting. You're probably taller than me, so a lower setting might work. But I put my elbow on the block, okay? And then I let that left arm extend to pull over. Okay, not using leverage, right? If I hold with the belt and I yank on it, some of you might like that, but I just need to be super cautious for spine care, and this works great for me, but a belt might work good too. So when you feel that reach with the left arm, you can turn your head so that cervical vertebrae gently rotates to the right. Breathe. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Okay, now left arm for all of us goes to the back. Okay, so isn't this nice? If you have a block under your right arm, you can just put your right hand on the block, push yourself back up. Right? Sometimes having that referral pressure point for the hand is great up into my back. So place a block, lowest setting in front of you, okay? Take your belt off your foot if you're using it. Now you'll know next side if you want the belt or not. And then as you bend that right knee, you're going to place your foot on the block. So door number one would be, and this is not the modification for pigeon, by the way, it's just getting towards there. So when I lean forward, okay, I'm going to move my sand in a few moments, but it kind of feels good right now. Okay, it's nice and settling for my hip. I'm happy. But if you don't want to use sand, take it off. It just might give you some grounding, just centering your pelvis. Okay, so hands could be back to the bolster, just lingering on top of it, but leaning forward, focusing on the curves of the spine. That includes the heart gently lifting. Okay. I know, anticipating pigeon pose, I think now. So I'm going to show a variation. It's going to be left leg pigeon. So those of us that are going to modify, I'll show you in a few moments, but those are going to pigeon. We just take the sand off the thigh and we bring the right leg to stretch back. Okay. Lower down into the left inner leg and the front of the back thigh. So when you go down with the elbows fold down, you can put them on blocks, and you can also lift up in the chest here. This feels the best for me right now in my back, as I like to really emphasize not just the hip thing, but the back thing. So the arch, it's a back bending pose. Okay, those that are modifying, you're going to sit in front of your bolster, right up against it though. You don't want to be like flying in front. You want to come down to the next to the bolster, elbows back on the bolster, and left ankle crosses to the right knee. Okay, since we're working on the hip in that area, if you're in figure 4 this way, right, you might as well do a little rolling, right? You got a ball, lean into your elbow, and you can just place it under the left rear and do a little bit of rolling, just side to side glide, okay? Or you might decide, I don't want to add the ball right now, I'm good here. I don't need adding things. So this is good. And I have the ball, I kept it, just left it there kind of next to my left almost near the piriformis. So I kind of just slide it under and I'm kind of pushing a little bit into it. And that feels good. I like that little cushion in my glute. Glute cushions. Elbows rest back. Patience for your hip. If it doesn't work good with your knee, slide your right foot down a little bit further away. That works good too. This is a good one. I think I like this as well as pigeon, actually. If pigeon doesn't bother your knee, it's okay. You know, if you're feeling just fine with it, no worry. Okay. All right. Those of us in the pigeon pose that are here, right? We're here. We're going to come out and we're going to all meet on our bolster. So sitting up, left leg out, right foot two, all this good care stuff here. Ball under the knee. I don't think that worked too well for me last time because it just rolled away, but I'm going to see if it works this side. Sand on, give yourself equal opportunity on the second side. What can you tell us the difference? I mean, this would be a good one. What's different on this side? You might already know, but block is good for me under the up. I just like to support my knee from having too much extension. No hyperextension here. Belt under left foot. Give yourself a fair chance on this side. So when you turn to the right, you got your left hand to the right knee and you're rotating. I forgot my block over there, didn't I? It's right besides my left leg. Got my block here, high setting, high as I can go. Okay, if you use the block. So if you got all these props, I would use them. Okay, may as well use some props. So as we turn, feel that reach. This can feel kind of serious. I think seated poses are serious poses. But noticing if you let all the weight sink into the right buttock. I'm noticing on this side, I am a more of a right rear sinker. Okay, so I'm going to try to gauge it right into the center. 2 sitting bones. Lift up the heart, turn. So what might help you with SI stuff is when you do these twists, I know they're good for us, but we have to be careful that we're not trying to do any twisting in the lumbar. So if it helps you to put your hand on the lower back, kind of just above the tailbone, and just keep that area stable. So when I turn, I'm trying to isolate in my ribs to make the rotation. Right? That's hard. It can happen. I mean, the ribs are ready to go, but that doesn't, you don't have to go further than that. Just accept where you're at. Okay, and then we reach down to that left leg. So I try to tilt. So now I'm going into the side stretch to my left side. I'm going to put my elbow on the block. That feels pretty good. And then I've got to let this right side of the back kind of melt. Just let it soften. You can definitely hold your belt with your left hand. I find this works pretty good. Some of you might not have issues in your tissues right now in this area, but it can get surprisingly inflamed, right? As you live in your body longer, just things can set it off. So you might find higher up on a block can be better. So you can get the feel of movement in your ribs. Okay, we're staying with those ribs. Right, there's no breathing muscles in my belly or behind it, right? There's no breathing muscles there. I don't think so. So feel where the breathing muscles can take that shift. Why would we do a side stretch, right? If it's a little tender in our back, right? This is our best work for our back care, right? For quenching these areas, especially that low back waist area, right in the back near this QL, where you might be touching your back. So some of us swing the arm overhead for a few moments. And really sense what's okay for your hip. Breathe. Okay. Okay, right hand lowers down. Help yourself up. Try to go crown of the head, up, 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 up. Okay. All right. Then place a block under your left foot. Okay. Left foot And then taking the time to lean forwards. Kind of think on how we're motioning through our back here. It's like we swivel to the side, we stretch out the side body, and then we combine the movements through the back of the pelvis here. We lean forward. I mean, we're trying to get a good full body kind of treatment or taking care of all these areas, these joints, this complex experience. Ignorance is bliss sometimes with body awareness, but it's also your stuff, right, to work through. So as you feel forward, this is a good time to kind of launch into that pigeon pose in the next few breaths. So if you're going into the kind of full pigeon, right, you take your sand off. I kind of like having something you launch off of with your foot up on something here. This is kind of nice. And then move the ball. Then just lean back. So this lifts you up. And then when you stretch the left leg back, it's like, whoop, there we go. Right? It's not as much to break free from. So when I lean forward, weight down, lower. Okay. So some of you know, right? You're going to go to blocks. You can go to the floor. The blocks might be welcome. If you're not going into pigeon, here's your variation. I'm a fan of this one. So sit in front, right ankle to left knee. Now, you might have to push back deep into your elbows to get this momentum. What's wonderful about this variation is that the bolster helps that curve of the lumbar, especially after all these poses we've done seated. It can be a little trying for the back. So here I am, right, with my back in its arch, pretty happy with it. Yeah, and this hip, right, maybe you put a ball, you just kind of sneak it to the side of the hip and lean into it, and you might find, so if I don't have the ball, okay, this is my range. If I get the ball and I kind of roll it under, now my knee moves outwards. It moves a little more. So it's probably pushing in here and then giving a little bit of expansion here. So you might use the ball. We're going to roll on it in a few moments anyway. So for all of us. So this is an option. Okay. Of course, you can simply go without it. So feel where that hip sensation is. Is it inner leg? The inner leg is a hip muscle too. Okay, now a few more breaths. If you're getting a little bit tired with it, lean forward rather than drop back. I don't want you to hurt your back. So push into the elbows. And you can always come out of a pose. There's no pose police here. Okay. All right, now the right foot, right, for any of these variations, whether I'm seated in pigeon, forward leaning, or back leaning, the foot flexing is a good knee protector, right, if I flex it. When I come out of the pose, I can't really force the flex. So what I want you to go towards, if you're in pigeon, you're going to swing the leg behind you forward, come back to sit, and then join us here. And we're going to uncross through the right leg, and then we're going to take a moment when we move our bolster, come on up to sit, move your bolster down to the base of your mat. You may as well bring it right up, well, yeah, put it up to a wall if you can. If you got a wall space that you can put a bolster on, that gives you some resistance so you won't be like flailing for support. It holds the bolster. Have one blanket. I hope you can go to just a single fold of it, have it low, but don't go without it. In the beginning, you might go minus the blanket, but have something. We'll be honest, I feel like this is almost too low, but I don't know. My teacher I recently was studying with, and it really reminded me that you got to take that round out of the neck. So just try when you're on your back to go lower with the blanket. Okay. So ball sacrum. Push into your feet, lift up the hips. Ball is at the base of my spine. Okay, so I'm going to move my hips side to side. Just kind of massage into that area. You might decide not to move your hips, just to be on the ball and breathe. Perfect. No one has to be moving, but it might be a little soundful if you've got one of the therapy balls. They're not quiet. So kind of feel for the texture here of the body weight into the ball. You're trying to push just the right amount. I don't want you to push so much that you're now tightening in your back muscles. No good. So feel how you flow. Now, as you move the ball to the right rear, you're going to lean into the ball and then guide the hips side to side, just like you were doing a moment ago, like you're wagging your tail side to side. But feel where you're kind of pushing into the ball and riding the muscle with the ball, right? It's pressing and it kind of nuzzles into the skin, the surface muscle. So you're moving the hips side to side. Feet are apart on the bolster. The bolster is kind of nice to have under your feet to give you a little edge into the pressure in the ball. In fact, if you had your feet higher up on like an ottoman or a couch, it would probably be even better. You won't have to do as much energy in the muscle to roll. You're just on the ball and it moves. Okay. All right, now come back center, tailbone down all the way. Take the ball for a moment away, and then you just let the knees go side to side, windshield wiper, go slow. You can toss the ball in the air if you want for a few breaths. Okay, just finding where is a good, I don't want to say edge, I don't want you to go to the edge of your range here, but finding the movement across the back of the pelvis. Let the knees move to the right, and then move the ball to the left rear. Keep in mind it's the rear. And then I keep it right on that border of the rear. That's as far as I can get the ball to anyway. I can't get it all the way to my tail, but I just nudge it in, and then I let my knees shift back center, and then I just get up on the ball, right? I'm on the ball. I don't even have to muscle into it. I just roll on it. I kind of glide on and mount the ball and then roll the left glute. Okay. So working on that tissue turnover. Yeah, I don't know what the evidence on the collagen turnover is on this, but people like to talk about it, so I'm not so sure. But it does feel good. That's about it. It feels good. I don't know what it's doing to my skin, but it is putting circulation and fluid in that area. It's pulling it, drawing it to the tight tissues. So when we glide across, feel where it's kind of the sensitive, where you get the most feedback into the glute. Maybe just hang out there for a few moments. Let your arms maybe cross like you're just trying to keep it together here. I can feel the pressure, okay? And then just roll it out. It's always good to get the pressure on a knot and then rub it out. Let's be left glute for a few more, and then we're gonna actually take a hip crossover. Okay, the party's not over yet. Okay, so let's take the ball to the sacrum, okay? Maybe tailbone, a little lower, it's the same zones, right? Bring the legs up. Okay, core challenge here. Core fun, let's say core fun. So I've got the ball creating some challenge, right, with a balance with my midsection. So I have my legs straight up. I'll bring my hands, palms down besides my hips. Breathe. You kind of lean a little right, a little left. That's part of balance. Okay. Now move the legs a little down. So you go from 90 degrees, maybe to 60-ish. But just feeling that peak sensation in the lowest part of the belly. Sleepy stuff there. Okay, now bring the legs back up to 90. Take a breath in, belly full. And exhale, the legs lower down just a little bit. Okay, challenging. Bend the knees into your chest. Okay. And then as you lower down your feet to the bolster, let the hips, the knees move to the right. You're going to roll to the right, then move the ball to the left side. And you're going to push your bolster to the right side of your mat. You might move your blanket under your head a little higher. Not necessarily higher up your back of your head, but you might fold it so it's higher under your head. It's a little bit higher, more support under your head. Okay, so fold it up so you have a little more bulk. If you decide, nope, I'm good without it, it's up to you. I like the sand on my outer thigh. Not everybody does. It depends on the day. today, right? If you feel like this is enough without the sand, and then you add awareness. Yeah, I'll be honest, this feels like maybe too much pull in my SI joint. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll go higher up and then just kind of make a decision across the hip. If it feels like there's some subtle sense of just, it's too much, right? Just let your right hand hold onto the leg and accept that. So that's okay. You just never know. The right leg at the bottom has to bend to support the sacroiliac as well. I don't want you to let the right leg at the bottom straighten, okay? That's a little too forceful. So find all the curves in the body, like the contour, the curve sensation in a hip. Interesting, like not long ago we did pigeon variation and the knee was pointing to the left, like if we were using left leg reference. So now we're pointing the knee to the right. Same area we're trying to focus on, hipish, but it's a lot of demand on the joint and the movement structure. So sometimes sand feels really good and sometimes you go, I've already done enough in this hip. Like, don't need to add that. So connect to what's best for you. Take a few more breaths. You might need to let your head roll to the left. You might be really content right in center. Opening the chest. You release that sand off the left thigh, slide it away. And if you've got the leg hooked over, just shift it. Take time to be cautious in the back. I just shift my tailbone back to a natural arch and center. Some people like to windshield wiper. I would do not bring the knees deep into the chest yet. That's definitely a bad sacrum move, but you sometimes have to learn the hard way. So don't push the knees in yet. Let the right leg swing over to the left on the bolster. Ball to the sacrum. I think if you use sand on the first side, you might use it on the second. There's no guarantees it'll feel great. Some of us might go, oh, that first side, no, maybe second side feels like it helps reset things with the sand. Nah, not for me. So, be aware, right? What is good today? What is not? Not like you're going downhill. It's just some days it's more sensitive than others. For whatever reason. Unknown. Okay. Left hand to the right leg, unless you have sand on the outer thigh. Okay, so opening through the chest. I suppose you could have sand here on the chest. Okay, some people like that. Some feels a little claustrophobic to have sand this high up near the throat. But relaxing your breath. Last couple poses here. Nice work. A good full body treatment. But feel the belly move with the breath. Feel its reach, especially with the twist of it all, right in the diaphragm. What a great way to strengthen it. And now as we start to shift in a moment or two, noticing where the shoulders are able to center back. I'm not sure if yours are, but you want to feel the shoulders back and down. It's a really important part when we go upside down, that our chest can stay open for the breathing muscles, kind of safety. Right? You want to have these safety, not that it's a dangerous activity, but yeah, for some levels new to this, it might be a little bit too much. Okay, now if I move my ball over, I'm not going to use it. Then start to roll. Now I like the movement out of this, then to legs up the wall. Some of you might like to bring your knees to your chest now. Okay. I have it kind of burned in my memory to avoid that till the end, but you might find your teachers never said that, so you can do that. Okay. So bolster next to the wall, right up against it. If you're averse to bolster at wall for inversions, no problem. Some of us will prefer a folded blanket and we place it, and this might be just a lot easier to get upside down too, right? If you have a folded blanket, It's mashable more than a bolster. Unless you have a bolster that's easy to mush down the middle. Most of us are going to have a dip in our bolster by, year one in it, 8 months into it. It's just kind of molds to ourself, right? So it's your bolster. Okay. Now, as you sit on the edge of the blanket or bolster, caution, this is already a forward bend to roll on your hips, right? So I do want to kind of be in that fetal position, and I'm rolling on my hip and my ribs. Okay, then the legs go up, and I just take my time. As you mature in your body, you're going to go, okay, I'm going to take a little bit more care to get into this. I recognize it's a valued pose. There's plenty of research on this inversion, but I still have to figure out if it works for my body today. So once you settle in, do a little bit of a checkpoint before you sand your feet. Like, okay, because once you put sand on your feet, it's hard to move your hips. It kind of cements it. And sand is like, it's weight for your hips, right? It's weight for the femur. It's all good, especially since this area is usually the other direction during the day. It kind of hits up the femur, the thigh bone into the hip socket. I sometimes like my feet super close on this one. I generally have a little separation so that the sand doesn't just fall off to one side. But I don't like to have them really far out. So some of us might find closer feet. Some don't use sand, no problem. You could be sand on your rib cage on this and really enjoy that. But feel where there's the opportunity to arch the back in just the most subtle way with the bolster under your pelvis. It's so nice. You can create these curves. The arms could be in goalpost. You can also relax your hands on your breathing muscles. If you've got an extra blanket, an easy reach, you could place it on your core. And some even teach putting your blanket over your sand, and so that it cascades down over your legs so you keep warmer. There might be a lot to organize. But as you circulate, this core area can sometimes use more heat, so a blanket could be good there, as I mentioned. But just recognize the, kind of the impermanence here of even the breath wave. So come back to that respiratory rhythm that we started with. If the heart rate is kind of kicking a little bit back and forth, sometimes you get into an inversion and it challenges you, but at some point you kind of win over it. The inversion wins over the heart and calms it down. Relaxing the face, your throat. So feeling where there's a kind of second pulse in the body, right? Likely navel center. You're going to notice that second pulse. So here's our, top pose for benefit for our heart health, for brain. Whatever's good for the heart's going to be good for the brain as well in the inversion practice. And that lymph drain. So lymphatic system 101, using our physiology position, right? Physiologically, we respond to going upside down in our heart, the heart rate, the blood pressure. And of course, that affects the brain. So let's take a few more breaths here. If you need to come out at any time, that's always fine. No forced stay in the practice. But how you come out of this one might be important. Sometimes we're just ready to go, gotta go. Okay, got that idea. But feel very, how can you kind of learn from your muscle memory of these, especially the days you swing out of these quickly, right? Go slow, move the feet away from the wall, even if it's a few extra seconds. And then as you hinge at the knees, you feel knees bend, you feel crease at the hip, back muscles, crease at the hip, back muscles, knees bend. And then you can toss your sand off to the side, overhead, but with the back muscles in this full stretch, knees to chest. Feet can still be at the wall, right? This feels better for your back. Hug them in. And then at the very final few moments here, just let the back feel that touch. Feel the reassuring massage into the kidneys that maybe feel touch into the bolster. This could be a lot on the lung pressure, so strengthen them by deep breath. And then as you roll to the side, let your hands help bring you around, take time. And then as you come around to take a seat on bolster, I would say sit on the blanket or bolster next to the wall and feel when you have that slow contact of the back. And then the hands can rest in your lap. They can also start to come up and merge together towards the basin of the heart. So as we feel that motion of breath together, breathing in wellness to yourself, to others that can use your support. Let's deep breath in. Inhale, belly soft. And with exhales, bowing into the space behind your heart.